Good day, everybody. I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone present here today and to thank you most sincerely for joining us at this 2023 Report Back member meeting. It is indeed a pleasure to be in one room with all of you again. We are delighted by the number of participants, which is an indication of the commitment, the enthusiasm, and the importance that you all place on not only the work of IAVE, but also the role that you play in volunteerism. You can move on to the next slide. Our agenda for today is to review our accomplishments in 2023 and to present to you the plans for 2024. We will be giving you all an opportunity to pose questions, and I would like to ask you to use the chat or question function in this regard. IAVE comprises the largest global network of volunteers, and this places us in a unique position of having an authentic voice in the volunteer community globally. We have the opportunity to address global challenges, and we are able to do so with integrity as we represent so many communities across the world. We have sharpened our mission and vision about the importance of volunteering now, and this is especially evident in our new strategic plan. And it is therefore our belief that IAVE is in a unique place where we can indeed meet the moment and respond most appropriately. I would like to take the opportunity now to hand over to Nichole. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time, wherever you are, to join us to discuss what we've accomplished in 2023 and a little bit of what we're going to accomplish in 2024. I'm starting to see people and friends and supporters from all over the world, and again, thank you for being a part of this. I first want to introduce the rest of the team, at least so that you can match a name to a face and say hello and know their role when you hear from them next. Obviously, we have Lowell Brown, who many of you are familiar with, who has joined us this year as our communications manager. You've heard from Ruth Lewin, our board chair, who has really successfully led this organization and is into her second term as board chair. We have Wendy Osborne, who is our strategic advisor. Many of you know her from our World Volunteer Conference in Abu Dhabi and also our upcoming World Volunteer Conference in Busan, which we'll talk a little bit about later. We also have Lori Foster, who directs our corporate strategy, Samuel Touré, who is our Africa coordinator for our global network for volunteer leaders, Iraida Menzila, who does the same in Latin America, and of course, Ken Allen. I see him at the end of my screen. Always delightful to have Ken in and amongst us. Ken is serving as our assistant treasurer, but he also serves in just a general mentor and wise source of information for IAVE. So these are the people that make IAVE tick, and I know that you will make sure to appreciate them and all the work that they do. So speaking of that, our work, well, again, from our strategic plan that you helped, all of you on this call and in the chat, and all of you joining us today, fed into when we rewrote it in 2021, we really focused on 4 large areas of our work. One is convening. Again, we are at the 27th World Volunteer Conference that happens biennially. So if you do the math, we're well into our 50th year of doing those kinds of convenings that bring leaders around the world to not only celebrate volunteering, but to discuss the best practices and also the problems that we're having and how we continue to raise the specter and recognition of volunteering globally as it occurs in each of our regions and countries. We have advocacy, and advocacy is really the work of enabling, creating and sustaining an enabling environment for volunteering wherever it occurs, making sure that volunteers do so safely and do so with guidance and do so with greatest impact. Our leadership development, we have our Global Corporate Volunteering Council, which I see many of you on the call associated with that, is really made up of companies, corporations existing in 3 or more regions of the world who really understand volunteering and its power to deliver on social impact and mission. We have our Global Network for Volunteer Leaders, which is our civil society network made up of people in their regions and in their countries who are really active and on the front lines, if you will, of formulating strong volunteering cultures and frameworks in their countries. And then finally, thought leadership, something IAVE has always really excelled at, if I could be so immodest, but really looking at what the trends are telling us around volunteering and how we really need to prepare our members, our network members, and everyone associated with us to better respond to those trends and to really understand what's happening and how to use those to better inform the work they do. So we're going to be talking about each one of these. Next, please, Lowell. Thank you. I'm going to start with convening. Again, you all know our World Volunteer Conference. We also have many other parts of convening that we've done in post-pandemic. Some of those have been smaller thought leader convenings that perhaps gather fewer people, but really focus on particular areas. And again, it's that notion of bringing that diversity together. So in 2023, we were delighted to host a roundtable for youth in the UK. You see me here pictured in the center with 2 of those folks who are really leading in the UK what youth volunteering looks like. And not only how to engage youth, but again, how to do so that reflects what they're looking at, the challenges they're facing, and how we can use those challenges to get more volunteers of young ages, and again, work with that greater impact. We also held a forum in Lisbon that brought together not only our GNVL, our Global Network for Volunteer Leaders, but also our GCVC to talk about, again, things that were really important, like impact measurement, like disaster volunteering. Lori, can I hand it over to you to talk about that and the working group?
Sure. Thank you, Nichole. Yes, the Global Corporate Volunteer Council is made up of about 40 global members, and many of them on the call here today. And what we do is we meet in person and virtually throughout the year to talk about best practices, inspiring practices in corporate volunteering, as well as challenges. And we did meet in Lisbon. We had 2 days of discussion. And we also met in Korea, in Seoul, Korea, in conjunction with the CSR Korea Forum. And the working groups have been talking about, we had one on collaboration, looking at potential collaborative projects for the member companies. And we also have had for 10 years a working group on disaster volunteering, talking with humanitarian organizations about the best way volunteers can work before, during, and in the recovery phase of disasters. And that work is ongoing. So back to you, Nichole.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Just a reminder again to put your questions in the chat function. We will be taking your questions afterwards, and we really want to hear from you, both about the things that you're hearing us talk about today, but other things that are on your mind, other things you want to see us doing, other things that you're concerned about or that you want to celebrate about volunteering. So please do put those in the chat. Okay, so our convening continued, where I am delighted to say that I had the privilege of working with Ruth Lewin to really host their champions, their employee volunteering programs at Discovery Limited at their summit. We had a group, and you can see them there. I think, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that picture really just does bring to light the joy that was in that room and the sense of collaboration. These are all Discovery Limited employees. Again, they're people who go above and beyond, volunteering in addition to their jobs and their hard work. And this particular summit really looked at some global trends and how those champions can incorporate those global trends within their work. Again, just lots of smiling faces and lots of joy in that room. We also did an event with the Peace Corps. We had a first ever partnership with the Peace Corps in South Africa, where our GNVL member from South Africa really helped us and did that jointly with us. We looked at global trends that not only the peace that would incorporate what was happening on the ground with our GNVL member in South Africa, but also what was happening globally, to take about 35 Peace Corps volunteers through understanding how to work with host communities. In other words, the volunteering structures that are already in country when they arrive. That was an incredibly successful event, and we hope to do more of that in the future. Lori, back over to you for the CSR Forum.
Yes, as I mentioned, the CSR Forum is something that happens in Korea every year, and the companies talk about corporate social responsibility. And we were invited to share our corporate volunteering research with about 100 Korean companies. And we also had one of our members from Fujitsu talk about how they measure impact. It was really a very engaging day. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, members of the Global Corporate Volunteer Council, most of them located in the Asia Pacific region, met to talk about how they are innovating in their corporate volunteer programs.
Next slide, please. I see Mary from the Longelo Youth Development of South Africa. Hello, Mary. I referred to her as our partner in Peace Corps. Mary's one of our GNVL members and is an incredible star. Great to see you on the call, and really great to see so many of our GNVL members on the call. I'll point out some others as we go. So Volunteering Ireland, and I see Nina on the call, who is the CEO of Volunteer Ireland, another GNVL member. You can see the patterns that are shaping up here, right? Everything we do in combination with our partners, our members, and our friends. I was privileged to be a part of that. That is a conference that happens every year that Nina and her team host every year. And if you aren't aware of it, check it out because it's a really informative conference. The Global Health Symposium. Lori, I'll get to that in a second. Let me just run through the others because I believe that's you. Points of Light Conference. We spoke at the IFRC Global Innovation Summit. We spoke at, and of course, our good partner forum, we spoke at IVCO. In that picture there, you can see Sam, who'll speak in a moment or two, really at that IVCO. We're just delighted because, again, not only is this a way to really meet you and continue to really build our relationships, but it's a way to really get out that thought leadership that you're all involved in, that you all help us to create. So getting out those best practices, talking about the work we're seeing, it really helps to lift volunteering everywhere. Lori?
Yes, the Global Health Symposium is a conference that's held each year. It's mainly with global health leaders, and this was in Austin, Texas last year. And they invited me to speak, and I asked them, "Are you sure?" And they said yes, because in fact, they see a connection with individual wellness and volunteering. So I talked to them about corporate volunteering trends, and it was really quite a lively discussion on the benefits to the individual who volunteers. Quite a good discussion.
Excellent. Next slide, please. Again, I said I'd do this, so I'm going to just want to point out Galina, long-term member in Russia, is joining us today, along with Slava, also a member. We have our new member from Cote d'Ivoire who's joined us. Nice to meet you. Hello. These are our global network for volunteer members. And of course, our long-term member, Debbie Huang, who has always been such a steadfast supporter. I'm doing this, I'm always risk doing this. I don't want to leave anybody out, but just to get to know some of the people that have been with us for a long time, and for those who just joined us a couple of weeks ago, you're all part of our family and we really cherish you. Speaking of cherish you, Bill Ripley is on the call. This never would have begun without his mother, Mary Ripley, who started IAVE 50 some odd years ago by turning to her friends and the people she knew who were working in volunteering and said, we should form a global community. So Bill, we hope that we carry on the legacy of your mother. It's always wonderful to see you on these calls. Wendy, over to you to talk about advocacy.
Thank you, Nichole. And I suppose one of the things I should start by saying is that everything that you will see today on this impact report is about advocacy, because that is part of IAVE's DNA. It's fundamental to what IAVE does as an organization. And it goes back to the vision of the organization, where IAVE envisions a world where volunteering is recognized and supported as vital to creating a fair, peaceful, sustainable, and compassionate world. And therefore, everything, the convening, the thought leadership, all of that is fundamental to building the partnerships that Nichole has indicated that allow us to take forward that advocacy in terms of gaining extra support and recognition for volunteering. And believe you me, the job is not yet done, because IAVE was doing this over 50 years ago and is still continuing to carry forward that challenge. But I want to just pick up on something that takes us a little bit back. But in 2022, as part of that advocacy journey, we commissioned a report which was looking at 3 research reports that had happened just during or post-COVID. One was our own, one was forums, and one was the State of the World's volunteering from the United Nations volunteers. And some of the things coming out of that are fundamental to IAVE's advocacy as we move forward. First of all, it's about the urgency to create that enabling environment for volunteering, which we all want, to enable volunteering to flourish wherever it is in the world. This progress towards achieving the SDGs, there's no doubt that the Sustainable Development Goals, partly due to COVID, but partly due to the huge challenges and all the challenges that come forward, the progress towards achieving those has not been as fast or as furious as people would hope. And then we have the climate crisis, which is not only with us, but is constantly being evidenced. And the whole thing about increasing inequalities, which came post-COVID. And also the desire and need for volunteer involving organizations and volunteering leadership organizations to constantly be collaborating, be innovating, being adaptive to what's happening around us. And that takes us very well into an advocacy challenge and opportunity, which is coming towards us. So could we have the next slide, please? And this is that in December of last year, the United Nations designated 2026 as the International Year of Volunteers for Sustainable Development. Now it is 25, by the time we get round to 2026, it'll be 25 years since 2001, which was the last International Year of Volunteers. And actually IAVE, prior to 2001, was an advocate for having that first international year. And it is there, and it was there in the Netherlands that IAVE launched the Universal Declaration of Volunteering, which we're currently reviewing as part of our advocacy work. So 2026 come rounds, which is a really great opportunity to make another commitment. And the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations has said that volunteers' commitment shapes a world where sustainable development is not merely a goal, but a shared reality we create together. And I think as we move forward to 2026 and post the World Volunteer Conference in 2024, we see part of the advocacy challenge, making sure that those who are working to create a very successful 2026 are looking at what are the real realities for volunteering, a need for more investment in volunteering, and a need for greater recognition from policymakers, from corporates, from volunteer involving organizations to make volunteering, to meet IAVE's vision and to make volunteering really contribute to that, to future sustainability. So I now hand back to Laurie.
Thank you, Wendy. So we talked earlier about the Global Corporate Volunteer Council, and last year we met virtually several times to talk about things like impact measurement. We had some experts talk about how to measure what volunteering is really doing. A tough topic and one that we love to discuss. We also talked about the relationship between corporate volunteering and ESG, environmental, social, and governance, a very important and sometimes controversial topic. But we talked about it with two different companies to show how corporate volunteer leaders will meld their programs to align with their company's ESG strategies. We also talked about innovation. We had a company who had quite a very famous, longstanding corporate volunteer program and entirely changed it last year. And we talked about the ins and outs and why that happened. I was also really pleased to work with GNVL members in what we called a master class on corporate volunteering. Corporate volunteering doesn't happen by itself. We always have a partner, and oftentimes it's a GNVL member or an NGO. And so what I shared were the motivations behind corporate volunteering, the different types of programs, and ways that GNVL members can align with corporate volunteer initiatives. So it was quite a good opportunity. So Sam, let me turn it over to you to continue on this topic.
Thank you so much, Laurie, and thanks to everyone who have actually joined us today. Well, IAVE, as you all have said, the beautiful work that you've heard. IAVE takes young people as a kind of a nucleus in the heart of what we do. And so to address some critical challenges, especially with regards to employment and boarding issues for young people across the world, IAVE actually led a kind of a consultation across the world, bringing the brightest minds and insights to look at a new solution, that is the reskilling revolution, to address the concerns of or the dear problems of young people, especially in Africa. Call it the reskilling revolution, which aims to skill access for young people in terms of skill development and to position them to gain employment. And that's actually focused on the 4 pathways. And that looks at we look at creating a taxonomy of skills, which and also with other pathway talks about enhancement of the digital and green skills and recognizing its accomplishments and also building evidence on it. And doing that, we also had a kind of like a positioning this forward in the Africa Union in last year, May. It was very much a good opportunity where we had our executive director, Nichole, were able to present the reskilling revolutions as a kind of like a pathway to address the problems of unemployment and the problems of the burden, especially with the middle-level manpower in Africa. So that reskilling revolution was actually proposed to the Africa Union in there, and it was seen as a kind of like a critical pathway to look at with the youth divisions. And we've been working strongly on that to ensure that the actualizations happen. And I also added to that, we also able to like pitch one day the Skilling Revolution in the Wire Summit that COP28 last year summit in Abu Dhabi, where it was we had a kind of like pitch it together, like I said, with the Wire Summit in COP28, and having a clear discussion to looking at a critical for also like a focus on kind of a green skills and in there, and it was seen like a kind of like a good practice to in addition to that. And that was shared a very good platform with what we are trying to do, working with the likes of like IBM to support the skilling evolution. And then it was seen like very much excited partner to scale this one in some countries that we are trying to do, Nigeria, the likes of Ethiopia, as well as South Africa, and that. So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sam.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Sam.
What I lost. Yeah, so that's the skills, the employee youth the skilling evolution. That's it's a pathway to for youth employability, and that's actually, like I said, focused on the green skills and the digital economy, trying to address the issues of young people across Africa in general. And we are working with the Africa Union strongly to ensure that we actualize that, and we are making some positive headway. I see you will get more information on this as we in the report of itself. So over to you again, Matt. Can I pass it over to Matt?
Sorry, I think it goes over to Lori. Hi, Lori.
Yes, hello. So we recently started a new award, the Ken Allen Award, to honor the service of one of our colleagues, Ken Allen, who has been a member of IAVE for 44 years. And in those 44 years, Ken was also World Volunteer President for a term. So in acknowledgement of this service, we created an award for leadership in volunteer service. In 2023, it went to Alfredo Abreu, who was the founder and leader of the Serve the City Portugal. And he has done tremendous work in Portugal to serve many communities. So we wanted to acknowledge him with this award. So IAVE produces, as we've said before, tremendous thought leadership. And we were very pleased to create a very significant body of work beginning, we published in 2022, Corporate Volunteering for a Post-Pandemic World. And this was done through interviews with 80 different companies around the world in 32 different countries. And for this research, we interviewed 200 different individuals, both corporate, nonprofit leaders, global leaders in volunteering, academics, and we published the first part in 2022 and the second last year in 2023. So the first part dealt with all kinds of topics, including how companies responded to COVID, how they develop skills-based volunteering, how they use it for employee development, and so on and so forth, cross-border volunteering. You can download this by chapter, part 1. And part 2, we looked at how corporate volunteering happens in each of the regions of the world, including major companies such as China, India, and so forth. So we're really pleased with this research. We've had many downloads, and my colleagues and I have been talking about it in many different forums. So Ken Allen was a co-author working on the project and using his expertise in the previous research that he had done, corporate volunteering in a global world. Also, Monica Kroll joined us, and we had a team of 10 researchers located all over the world. So we truly had a global perspective on this research. So we look forward to you reading it and also giving us any of your thoughts on that work. So let's see, over to you. Wendy, right?
Yes, thank you, Laura. I want to talk about the thought leadership we did in relation to youth volunteering. And this is a piece of, I think, really important work. And in fact, a body of work that I think if you look on IAVE's website, you wouldn't find it anywhere else across the globe. We started this in 2022. I'm sure a number of those people on the call will already remember that. And we did then some dialogue work with our member organizations and our GNVL members at the IAVE World Volunteer Conference in Abu Dhabi. And I think one of the things I want to say is that IAVE was committed to youth volunteering and looking at it really closely through research in its strategic plan for this current strategic plan. But we're also responsive to what our members say to us about it. So engaging in that dialogue was really important because it allowed us to tease out that people, yes, we're really keen on the whole issue of youth volunteering and employability, but they were also conscious, particularly in a post-COVID world, of youth volunteering and well-being, particularly mental health. They were also thinking of new ways in which young people were getting involved, not the traditional routes, but more interested in, self-action, self-motivation. And that's why we looked at youth volunteering and activism. And then bringing into this not just about employability, but about sustainable livelihoods. How can we help our young people across the world through their volunteering actually create the kind of lives for themselves that they would wish and want? So the youth volunteering piece is really important, and that research is really important. And if anybody on this call hasn't looked at it, I would ask you to go to do so. But we're not finished with it yet, because in 2023 we partnered with Forum, and we issued another challenge paper looking at a new generation of volunteers as change makers, and that was to support their conference theme that was held in Malaysia in October 2023. And we'll be looking forward now in 2024 to a webinar looking again at, well, what came out of IFCO? What is IAVE saying about that theme of young volunteers as change makers? And we're hoping to have that webinar before the summer, possibly in May or June. So could I have the next slide, please? Last year, we also looked at volunteering for the common good. And the objective of this was to take the World Volunteer Conference that was held in Abu Dhabi in 2022, which had as its theme volunteering for the common good, and link that to the theme for the 2024 World Volunteer Conference to be held in Busan in South Korea. And it is volunteering looking at sustainability. And looking at both those things, we did a little bit different webinars. We actually brought together academics and practitioners and asked them to talk about some aspect of the Sustainable Development Goals that was important to them, whether it was from an academic viewpoint or from a practitioner's viewpoint. And they were really thoughtful and useful webinars. And again, really helping people to think through, what do these issues mean for volunteers and volunteering? And we will use those webinars as part of our thought leadership for the conference going forward this year in 2024. So now I'm happy to move on to Sam.
Okay, Sam, I think Sam has taken us through the, excuse me, the reskilling revolution on an earlier slide. I will just say that, it's really born off of our strategic plan. And not only the fact that we are, again, building leadership, but that leadership is creating a movement through collective action. So our board, our team, and many of you said, well, volunteering in and of itself is great, but it can be more impactful if it's devoted to solving issues like climate change, inequality, youth unemployability. And that's just what we did. We took our global network for volunteer leadership and a partnership with the African Union and really are beginning focusing that, putting that dynamic combination together of volunteering to solve particular problems. So it's a watch this space and stay tuned, but we're really excited about this program, and we're really excited to moving on to other impact programs. There's sadly too many problems out there, and we have a resource and a solution that can actually help solve it. So we hope to continue looking in areas like climate change and et cetera, to be able to bring our networks and the power of those networks to solving those through collective action. Excellent. So that's Rewired. Next slide, please. Yes. Okay. So I'm stepping in here for Matt Clausen, our vice chair of the board, who is also our North American representative. Just to simply say, these were our board members in 2023. You can find them on our website under leadership. And of course, IAVE relies on its board for its strategic guidance. The relationship that we have, obviously, with Ruth and Matt and Wolfgang and Mohammed, our executive committee, and all of our board members, to really help guide the organization. Are we doing what we need to be doing? Are we, quote unquote, meeting the moment that we're in and living our mission the best way we can? So we really, really appreciate our board members and all of the work they do. Speaking of that, we've had new board members join us. Again, I won't really go through this because all of this is on our website. But just to say that new voices, new faces, new people who can really work alongside those with a longer history of IAVE is a really important balance for us. I am so proud to reflect on the diversity of origin and geography and perspective that our board brings. I can say that we have one of the most diverse boards I have ever worked for and with. And it is something that I personally value because it is that reflection of those we serve. And not only sort of putting their names there, but really engaging them in our work. So I'm delighted to have them. And I'm delighted that we are so well looked after at IAVE from a governance perspective. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Lowell, who's just going to break through some of our membership. Lowell?
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to meet all of you virtually. So I apologize if these slides are have very fine type for a lot of you. I have been working on a few different things regarding our membership. First of all, many of you got my apology about the lack of functioning of the membership form. Some of you tried to sign up. Some of you were asked to renew, and you didn't have success. And some of you went around several times with me trying to just be part of our organization. I'm pretty confident that those issues are solved now. Thank you for all of you that stuck with us during a little bit of technical turbulence. I also have been interested in taking a bit of a broader look at trends. And so this members slide, which shows about a 10-year span in the graph, shows that our membership is tracking upward overall. And in recent history, our organizational members have passed our individual members. I was curious about not just the diversity of the current membership, how many members are from each region, but also what changes have occurred over time. And so the graph here, also about a 10-year span, shows the percentage that each region was represented in IAVE in that given time period. And so you can see there's been a lot of fluctuation where at one point Asia Pacific was dominant and went way down and is coming back up, whereas the Africa region has enjoyed a steady climb from nothing to being right in the pack with the rest of the regions. But like Nichole said, we're really grateful for the geographic and cultural diversity that IAVE represents, and like her, it's one of the most diverse memberships that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So thank you to all of you for being part of it and for making that this amazing collection of people possible. Not reflected in those membership graphs is kind of a subset of what IAVE does that you heard Sam speak to, and this is the GMBL, the global network of volunteer leaders. Arida, can I put you on the spot to talk a little bit about your work with the GNVL in Latin America, or anything else you want to say?
Okay. Hello, everyone. And I'm so proud and happy to help IAVE in this region. It has been a wonderful work. We have very committed GNVL members, and we are trying to grow a little bit more. And we are very, very excited about what's going on in Africa. So Sam, with his risky revolution, and to know if we could do something like that. Let's hope we can do it. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope we will grow more in the next month. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for to you and Sam and all our GNVL members. I have the pleasure of being on a WhatsApp group with many of you, and it's just lovely to see the amount of exchange that GNVL members have with each other, the amount of support, the initiatives you're each taking in your local contexts, and the connections you're making across contexts. And that's what IAVE is all about. You exemplify that. An example of a different kind of diversity, kind of our sector diversity, and I'm afraid that maybe that type on the graph is too small here, but the dark blue in the upper right is 17% for academic, the orange is corporate, the gray is government, and the large portion there is nonprofit. This doesn't speak to all of our online webinar events last year, but the 4, I guess, webinars that were part of volunteering for the common good were well attended and showed this lovely spread of sector diversity, which we're also very proud of. Nichole.
Excellent. Thank you, Lowell, and thank you for that. Okay, I think Ken has pointed out 35 countries represented. Ken, I think it might be more than that, but because it certainly looks so. We have Sylvia from Bolivia. Sylvia has been such a long-term member. We celebrate you, Sylvia. We have Alex from Peru, who is a really active GNVL member. Leaky from Hong Kong, who has done such a great job. So many members. Blessing from Nigeria, Mahendra from Mauritius, Leila from Croatia, also board chair of the Center for European Volunteering. We really celebrate you. I also want to note that Uchenna, our board member representing Africa, is on the call. Uchenna has just finished his first year, but he is such an asset to us. Excellent. So I'm going to talk about 2024, and I'm going to do so rather quickly and ask all of my remaining presenters to do so quickly so that we have time for some questions. 2024, okay, big year. We have a lot going on. Next slide, please. We were delighted to partner with Emirates Foundation to bring you the second volunteering ideathon. So many of you participated, over 270 registrations globally from 80 countries. It was a magnificent event, and I'm delighted to say that many of our GNVL members made it into that final 15 rounds. And one of them right here, our member from Ethiopia, actually won his category. So we're winning also 25,000 US. So we're always delighted to work hard to bring you those types of engagement events. Okay, next goes to Wendy. And again, if I could just make sure everyone is concise so we have time for questions. Wendy, please.
Oh dear, Nichole, it's very difficult to be concise about the 27th IAVE World Volunteer Conference. And I'm hoping that all of the 93 participants and the 35 plus countries that are on this call, that we will be able to meet them in person in Busan from the 20th to the 25th of October this year. We're looking forward to the conference. I'll ask Lowell to put the conference website in the chat. So if you haven't access to it already, you can take a look there. You will see that we have the program outline there. We are hoping for 800 participants. And again, we're hoping for, 75 plus countries to be with us in Busan. We had our site visit last year, and we know that Busan is ready to welcome IAVE and the conference participants to a very vibrant city, the second city of Korea, and to an organization that is very committed to volunteering, and indeed to a country that is very committed to volunteering and has quite an outstanding volunteering infrastructure that I think would be the envy of most of the world. So we are delighted to be going to Busan. We did put out a call for presentations. I'm happy to say we had 168 responses to that. So our networks are very keen to be with us in Busan. And those of you on the call who put forward a submission, you will be hearing from me this week. That might stop one of the questions from coming through, that you will be getting an email in relation to your either your scholarship application or your call for presentations. You'll be getting something from me this week. So all I can say is, please do make an effort, do look at the website, and do think about joining us in Busan. We really would love to welcome you there to start, talking and engaging our global family about volunteering. So thank you. Now it's over to Laurie. So I think we're going from Busan to London.
Well, let me just very, very quickly before we go to Laurie, is just that we will have an Arab region represented election this year. Just stay tuned if you're in that region or if you know anyone in that region. Okay, Laurie, over to you.
Okay, so the GCVC will be meeting in central London next month, the middle of next month. We will be hosted by the satellite company Viasat. And so in addition to talking about skills-based volunteering, impact measurement, we will also hear from some actual volunteers. We will be hearing from a young volunteer talking about what they hope their companies will do and what they are actually doing to move their companies forward. We're also going to be hearing from two volunteers, corporate volunteers who work in disaster situations, so that we can learn from the perspectives of these volunteers. So we're looking forward. We have very good attendance at this meeting. I'd say about 20 companies, 20 to 25 companies represented. So we're looking forward to meeting in person, which is always exciting. Thank you.
All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. Let me just say that the impact report, this presentation in report form, will go out to all of you and will be sent directly following this meeting, and it'll contain all of the information that we've spoken about. Before we get to questions, I want to turn it over to Ken Allen, again, asking to be brief, which, as Wendy put the challenge, it's going to be hard to talk, have someone with the wealth of information that Ken has to be brief. But I would love to hear your thoughts, Ken, reflections on IAVE, the past, and what's ahead for the future. Thank you, Ken.
Okay, so the past is past, and I think we have strong memories of IAVE's foundation or founding by a dedicated group of volunteers, volunteer leaders from around the world who systematically grew out the organization from a very informal, almost club-like existence to what it is today with representation. I was impressed. I was counting here that there are 39 countries, I think 39 or 40 countries on here. And that's like 5 times the number that came to the first IAVE World Conference. So you can see how over 50 years we've evolved from being a club to being now a true global organization. Our participation with United Nations volunteers in celebration of the original International Year of Volunteers was a high watermark. And here we come again with the opportunity for all of us to gather together and through the IAVE network, make an impact on the planning and execution of this next International Year of Volunteers. IAVE's growth has been phenomenal. It's because of everyone on this call, paid staff, board members, members from around the world. People have served in various leadership capacities, and on and on and on. I just want to say that for me, while the past is a really strong positive memory of how organizations can grow and flourish and re-energize themselves, I look forward in whatever years I have left to seeing IAVE continue to grow, continue to have an impact, and continue to bring together leaders like all of you who are on this call. This is a way to make connection. It's a way to support one another. And most importantly, it's a way to energize global leadership for the global volunteer community. So I'm thrilled to still be a part of it. Thanks, Nichole.
I bet for a lot of you, just hearing Ken's voice was quite soothing. I know every time I hear it, I feel like everything's going to be okay. So thank you, Ken. And again, that Ken Allen Award is in honor of all of your enormous and tremendous service. Ken told me he went to the first World Volunteer Conference in 1980. That just gives you a perspective of just the incredible experience that he brings and how lucky we are to have him. All right.
It brings you a perspective on how old I am.
Well, I mean, with experience, there does come age sometimes, Ken. I will not lie about that. The two go hand in hand. But for me, I value your experience in addition to your gray hair. So the impact report will come out at the end of this, which again, I want to turn to some questions. And again, please make sure you add them to the chat. I see one from Nuntini Malinon, who is a previous board member from Asia Pacific. It's so nice to see you on this call. She asks about IAVE and youth volunteering. Well, I do want to just point out that reskilling revolution that we talked about, that Sam talked about, and yes, it's a pilot that we're rolling out, but our aspiration is to roll it out globally, is focused on youth volunteering and how we utilize youth to build employability. So that's one answer to the question. I think also the Youth Advisory Committee, headed up by our current youth board member, Yvette Tacky, has engaged and is in active pursuit for a host for a youth conference. The last one was quite a long time ago, 2010, I believe. We got waylaid a little bit by that thing called the pandemic, but we're really re-engaged, and we hope to bring that valuable constituency together under that youth summit in the coming years. Okay, Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you. Again, briefly, Debbie has a question on ESG measurement in corporate work. If you could point to a quick question on that, that would be great. Thank you, Lori.
Yes, actually, I was just responding to that online. But Debbie, we had 2 different meetings of GCVC members and guest presenters. But I would be happy to have a conversation with you about what we learned and share some of the highlight slides from that conversation. So in addition, we do have many chapters in our research, but I'm happy to point you towards it. If you want to get in touch with me, I'll put my email into the chat. We can talk about it.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, I see that people have begun to put their countries in the chat, Ken, so you might want to do a quick tally. I suspect it might be higher than 39 or 40 countries. And again, I want to say a special hello. We have so many GNVL members on the call, a special hello to them. But I also want to recognize, Lori has done that in the chat, our global corporate volunteer members. Thank you for being a part of this movement. We appreciate you so much. All right, I am going to turn this question over to Ruth, just to do a little bit of reflection. Actually, I'm going to ask this question to a couple of people, so be fair warned. Ruth, I want to ask you literally about some of the greatest successes you feel we've had in the past from looking at this body of work, and actually what you might point to in 2024 that might also be an opportunity for volunteering, not just IAVE, but volunteering globally. So challenges from the past and how those might be reflected into opportunities going forward.
Thanks, Nichole. I mean, just in my experience, or in my during my term and for the last 3 years, I think the one thing that I've found exceptionally inspirational has been the fact that we are a lot more cohesive as a group of members. We are engaging much more in our regions as well. And looking at common challenges which exist and how we can learn from each other and share, experiences of addressing those challenges and working together in a much more collaborative way. That I have found particularly useful, just from my perspective, even on the continent. If we look at something like youth unemployment, it's such a global problem, and certainly on our continent, it is a common challenge that we have to face. And I think we are moving towards addressing those common challenges. So that I find quite useful. I think we've also been able to identify what our outcomes should be quite clearly, so that we can measure impact in a much more meaningful way and thereby address development in a much more fundamental way. So the longer term sustainability of the kinds of challenges we all face is something at the heart of what we do and address in that kind of manner. So I'm not sure whether I've answered the question sufficiently, but just off the top of my head, that is, that has been quite. And I think our conference in the UAE really assisted us in bringing that together and thinking through, the way forward in a much more cohesive way. So, yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant, Ruth. I think that summarized it quite well. I'm going to turn to Wendy, put Wendy on the spot. She answered a little bit this when she talked about advocacy, but Wendy, with your long history as well with IAVE, what are some of the successes that you particularly think resonate from the work of the last year? And what might be something to point to going forward in 2024? And again, I'll ask you to be brief.
Okay, well, I suppose, over the last year, and I think the actual statistics and maps that Lowell shared, there are two things. First of all, it's the growing IAVE reach. No matter whether it's a webinar or a convening, it's the reach that we have now, that IAVE has. And Ken alluded to this, where we're tapping into 100 countries on a regular basis, and that really is amazing. And then the second thing is, I think, is the growth of the leadership networks, the focus on GCVC and GNVL, which is really focusing down on creating leadership infrastructures that, like cascading IAVE's mission and vision so that others share it and help us do the work. So I think that those two things are very, very important. Nothing can be done alone, so it takes us to really work with those networks to achieve.
Yes, that is an excellent place to bring us to a close, because I think that embodies the work that Ken spoke about when it first started to what Ruth just said about where we're going. Nothing can be done alone. That is at the heart of IAVE. So it's just left to me to say, first and foremost, thank you to this amazing team. Each and every one of them goes above and beyond to deliver all of what you talked about. We're small, but we're mighty. And they really deserve that thanks. Thanks to Ruth and the rest of the board for their leadership, for their support, and for their friendship. And also thanks to everyone, not just on this call, but everyone who's ever been a member of IAVE and everyone who's ever contributed both their thoughts, their ideas, and their resources. We thank you so very much. We look forward to seeing all of you in Busan in October. And thank you so much for joining us. The impact report will be sent out. Have a great rest evening, day, morning, wherever this reaches you in the world. And thank you so much.